Everyone knew she'd win, but nobody knew it would happen like this.
Doesn't matter if everyone knows whose hands it's supposed to be in. Magic happens when magic happens, and we've seen it a lot with Caitlin Clark.
Caitlin Clark walked into that arena not just as a rookie, but as someone carrying the weight of an entire debate on her shoulders. The kind of debate that breaks friendships, trends on Twitter, and fills sports shows for weeks. Angel Reese had the numbers, the fire, the crowd. She was undeniable, and yet something happened that night that shifted everything. One performance, one statement, no words needed. Caitlin Clark didn't just play basketball that night. She answered something. But here's what most people completely missed about that game, and what the highlights will never show you. Stay with us. We're revealing the full truth tonight. She wasn't supposed to struggle. Caitlin Clark came into the WNBA carrying more weight than any rookie in recent memory.
Iowa superstar Caitlin Clark has announced she will enter the WNBA draft.
Before she even played a single professional game, the expectations were already impossible. Sellout crowds, record TV ratings. Every arena she walked into felt like a finals game. People weren't just watching to see her play, they were watching to see if she could survive. And that pressure was different from anything the league had seen before. The WNBA had stars before Clark. It had moments before Clark. But the sheer volume of attention that followed her from college into the pros was something nobody had a real playbook for. Arenas that had been half empty for years were suddenly selling out weeks in advance. TV deals were being renegotiated. The whole conversation around women's basketball shifted, and all of it was resting on one rookie's shoulders. And in the early weeks, she didn't just survive. Caitlin Clark was making passes that left even veteran players blinking. Her court vision, the ability to see plays before they happened, was something coaches and teammates kept coming back to. Her teammates said it plainly. She sees things as they're happening, sometimes before the player who's going to receive the ball even knows it's coming their way. That's not something you teach. That's a gift. But gifts come with a cost. Clark had 42 more turnovers than any other player in the entire league. Not 10 more, not 20 more. 42.
Caitlin Clark did not miss a step after being sidelined for 5 games with a quad injury. Are you serious, Caitlin Clark?
That number became a weapon for everyone who wanted to say the hype wasn't real. Sports shows picked it apart. Critics leaned on it hard, and for a moment, it looked like the turnovers might define her rookie year more than the assists or the threes. The noise got loud, really loud. Every bad pass got its own segment. Every mistake got slowed down and replayed. For most rookies, that kind of microscope breaks something. You start playing not to lose instead of playing to win. You stop trusting your instincts because every instinct that goes wrong ends up on a highlight reel with a caption that reads, "Is she really that good?" Clark never flinched. But here's what those critics missed. The turnovers weren't happening because she was playing scared or sloppy. They were happening because she was playing at a level her teammates were still catching up to. The passes she was throwing were a half second ahead of everyone else on the floor. Sometimes that connection worked. Sometimes it didn't. That's what happens when you're playing a different version of the game than everyone around you. Think about it this way. If you slowed down every great point guard's rookie season and counted only their mistakes, you'd build a pretty convincing case against all of them. The turnovers don't tell you what kind of player someone is. They tell you what kind of risks they're willing to take. The real question going into the 4-game series against Chicago wasn't whether Clark was talented. Everyone already knew that. The question was whether she could control that gift or whether the pressure, the turnovers, and the spotlight would finally catch up to her. Chicago was about to give her that answer. Angel Reese was a problem angel. Reese was a problem. Before we talk about what Clark did in those 4 games, we need to talk about Angel Reese, because this story doesn't work without her. Reese came into 2024 as the most physically dominant rookie in the league. During her rebounding numbers were historic 12 double-doubles in a row at one point.
Reese on the move. Reese lays it in. Angel Reese in double figures.
A record that had the entire WNBA talking. She wasn't waiting for opportunities. She was creating them through sheer aggression and desire. As she put it herself, you can't just go snatch the glass. You have to put a body on somebody first, then go get it. That's a mindset, not just a skill. The Chicago Sky built their entire identity around Reese and center Camila Cardoso. They were the best rebounding team in the league, and they knew it. Their strategy in every game against Indiana was simply to be more physical, control the glass, and make the Fever uncomfortable. And it worked. In the first two meetings, the games were never comfortable. Indiana won both, but never easily. The leads were small. The tension was constant. Angel Reese was always right there, pulling the game back toward Chicago every time Indiana tried to pull away. But what made Reese genuinely dangerous wasn't just the rebounding, it was the timing. She had a habit of showing up exactly when Chicago needed her most. Down by 5 with 4 minutes left, Reese finds a way to the glass. Opponent on a run, Reese puts back a miss that kills the momentum completely. There's a specific kind of player in basketball who doesn't need a perfect play to be drawn up for them. They just find a way. That was her all season. The numbers backed it up too. By mid-season, Reese was averaging a double-double. For context, most WNBA veterans go entire careers without stringing together the kind of consistent production she was putting up as a first-year player. Sports analysts weren't just mentioning her name alongside Clark anymore. Some were putting her ahead. The debate between Clark and Reese was genuine. At the halfway point of the season, several analysts had moved to Angel's side. Her numbers were consistent, her impact was undeniable, and she delivered in big moments, the kind of player who makes everyone around her better just by demanding the ball. Here's what the highlight reels don't show, though. Every time Indiana started to breathe, every time a small lead felt like it might grow into something comfortable, Reese was the reason it didn't. She was the hand that kept pulling Chicago back into every game, not with flash, with work. So when people say the Rookie of the Year race was over early, they're rewriting history. It was real, it was close, and Angel Reese made it that way. 3 games for 3 lessons. The first game between Indiana and Chicago set the tone for everything that followed. Clark was sharp early, her passing was crisp, her shooting was on. But turnovers kept the door open for Chicago. It was a 1-point game at stages. The Fever escaped, but only barely. What that first game really showed was how fine the margin was between these two teams. Indiana had more talent on paper, but Chicago had something that doesn't show up in box scores. A physical nastiness that made every possession feel like a fight. Every time Indiana tried to create space, Chicago closed it. Every time Clark tried to push the pace, someone in a black jersey was right there making it uncomfortable. The Fever won, but they left that building knowing they hadn't actually solved anything. Game 2 was different. Clark took the shots that were hers and knocked them down. She distributed it. She read the defense. Teammates who weren't known for big scoring nights suddenly looked like entirely different players. Someone in that building described it as her best all-around performance, and watching it back, it's hard to argue. Indiana won again. Still not comfortable, still close, but the margin was growing. The key shift in Game 2 wasn't just Clark's scoring, it was her decision-making. She wasn't forcing things. She was letting the game come to her, reading what the defense gave, and making the right play instead of the highlight play. That's a different level of basketball IQ. And for a rookie still being criticized for turnovers, it was a quiet but significant statement. And then came Game 3, and this one is important because it shows exactly why this story has real weight. Indiana built a 15-point lead in the fourth quarter. 15 points. The game looked decided, and then Chicago, led by Angel Reese, dismantled that lead piece by piece. Reese finished with 25 points and 16 rebounds.
Dumps it down, Reese bangs inside and flips it in.
Indiana had no answer for her down the stretch. With 30 seconds left, Indiana still had a chance, but the final play didn't fall. Chicago won. That collapse didn't happen because Indiana forgot how to play basketball. It happened because they stopped trusting the pace that had been working all game. They slowed down. They got cautious. And Chicago, a team that had been waiting all game for exactly that moment, punched straight through them. One stop at a time, one rebound at a time, until 15 points became nothing. That loss mattered, not because it changed the series. Indiana still led 2-1, but because it exposed something. When Indiana stopped playing their game, when they let Chicago's physicality slow them down and shift the pace, the lead evaporated fast. Indiana's coach admitted it directly. Chicago turned up the heat, and Indiana didn't respond well enough. The lesson from Game 3 wasn't about Clark's numbers or Reese's numbers. It was about identity. Indiana had one when they played fast, moved the ball, and trusted each other. When they abandoned that identity, even a 15-point lead wasn't safe. That lesson would define everything about Game 4. The night the debate ended. Going into the fourth and final meeting, Indiana's coaching staff made a decision that sounds simple, but takes real trust to actually do. They told Clark to run the offense, call the plays. Her coach explained the thinking. The crowd is loud, I can't communicate every single call from the sideline. You need to be the one making decisions out there. For a rookie, that's an enormous amount of responsibility. Most veterans would feel the weight of that. Clark treated it like the most natural thing in the world. But let's sit with that decision for a second, because it's easy to read that and move past it. Coaches don't hand the keys to rookies in must-win road games. That's not how professional sports works. And her coach looked at her and said, "You're the one." That says everything about what this team believed she was capable of, even before Game 4 proved it. Chicago came out aggressive. Lindsey Allen, their guard, was on fire early going back-to-back, forcing Indiana into timeouts, dictating the pace. For a moment, it looked like Game 3 all over again. The kind of start where a team either finds their footing or spirals. Indiana found their footing. And the moment they did, you could feel the game shift. Not dramatically, no single play flipped everything at once. It was quieter than that. Clark started making reads that Chicago's defense simply wasn't prepared for. A pass before the defender could recover. A pull-up three at exactly the right moment. A drive that drew the foul and kept the possession alive. Small decisions, made fast, made correctly over and over again. Clark started calling plays, not plays from a script, but reads in real time. Who just made a shot? Who needs a touch? Where is the defense vulnerable right now?
She's now 1 for 12 on the day from deep.
That's where she likes to go, that right to left signature shot.
She was processing the game like a point guard 10 years into their career. Passes to Smith, kicks to Samuelson. Pick and roll execution with Boston that Chicago simply had no answer for. That pick and roll with Boston deserves its own moment. By the second half, it had become almost unstoppable. They tried going under. Nothing worked. When two players develop that kind of chemistry where the decision happens before the play even fully develops, it stops being basketball and starts being something else entirely. The lead grew, not quickly, the sky kept fighting, but steadily. And every time Chicago got close, Indiana had a response. The bench was locked in, the ball was moving, and the crowd, even in enemy territory, started to feel the shift. There's a specific feeling in a building when one team has genuinely broken the other. It doesn't announce itself. The score might still look close, but the team that's losing starts playing differently, tighter, more desperate, less connected. You could see it happening to Chicago in real time. Their offense got more isolated. Their body language changed. The belief that had carried them through 3 competitive games started draining out slowly. By the time the fourth quarter was in full swing, Indiana was up by 11 and then kept going. The largest lead of the entire 4-game series. A number that Game 3 had made feel impossible. Chicago got frustrated. The fouls got more aggressive. At one point, a foul on Clark that had nothing to do with basketball play drew flags and replays. She walked away from it without a word and kept playing. That detail matters, because in Game 3, Indiana let Chicago's physicality get in their heads. In Game 4, nothing worked on Clark. Not the pressure, not the hard fouls, not the noise from the crowd. She had already decided how this game was going to go, and no amount of physical contact or crowd noise was going to change that decision. She finished with 6 3-pointers and exited the game with time still left on the clock, because the lead was already that comfortable. The building gave her a standing ovation on the way out. In Chicago, in enemy territory. That doesn't happen by accident. Final score, Indiana 100, Chicago 81. Series, Indiana 3, Chicago 1. What the numbers don't say, after the series ended, the Rookie of the Year conversation moved fast. One analyst who had publicly backed Reese at the halfway point walked back his position, comparing Reese to Rodman and Clark to Jordan. Not a perfect analogy, but the point was clear. Reese's contributions were real and historic, but Clark's impact on the game, on her team, on the league's attention, on the level of play around her, operated on a different level. When the vote came in, Clark won with 66 of 67 votes. The single dissenting vote went to Angel Reese, 66 out of 67, in a race that had been genuinely competitive for most of the season, in a race where respected analysts had publicly argued the other side. That's not a close call that went one way at the last minute. But here's what that number doesn't tell you. It doesn't tell you about the 4 games where Indiana could have fallen apart and didn't. Either it doesn't tell you about a 15-point lead that vanished in Game 3 and then came back larger in Game 4. It doesn't tell you about a rookie who was handed play-calling responsibilities and made it look like she'd been doing it for years. It also doesn't tell you what it actually cost her to get there. The criticism that came with every turnover. The physical play got more aggressive as the season went on. The weight of an entire league's attention sitting on her shoulders from the very first game. Numbers measure outcomes. They don't measure what someone had to carry to produce those outcomes. There's another thing the vote doesn't capture: what Clark did for the people around her. Teammates who had been in the league for years suddenly found themselves in front of bigger crowds, on bigger broadcasts, with more eyes on their games than they'd ever experienced. Clark elevated everyone around her simply by showing up and demanding that the game be played at a higher level. The award was never really the point. Clark said it herself: if you're playing basketball to win individual awards, you're doing it wrong. And you can tell she meant it. Because throughout the entire season, through the criticism, the turnovers, the physical fouls, the noise, she never once made it about herself publicly.
The on-court ruling of a personal foul on Caitlin Clark has been upgraded to a flagrant foul penalty 1.
Every answer pointed back to the team. Every big moment got shared. That's harder than it sounds. When you're the most talked about player in a league, the pull towards self-promotion is enormous. The media gives you every opportunity to take credit. Clark consistently didn't take it. What the 4 games against Chicago showed:
25 points off of Chicago's turnovers. What's impressed you the most about your defensive effort in this game?
Was something simpler and harder to measure. A player who could handle being the most watched person in any building she entered, who could turn turnovers into trust and criticism into focus, who could take a painful lesson from Game 3 and apply it so completely in Game 4 that Chicago never had a real answer. The best players in any sport share one quality that has nothing to do with physical ability. Through 4 games against one of the most physical teams in the league, Clark expanded every single time Indiana needed her to. Angel Reese was and still is a special player. Her 2024 season deserves real respect. The double-doubles, the rebounding records, the sheer competitive fire she brought every night, none of that disappears because Clark won the award. So 2 players can both be exceptional. The debate was real because Reese made it real. 4 games, 1 series, and a question that had been sitting over the entire WNBA season finally had its answer. But this wasn't just about an award. It was about 2 players who forced everyone to pay attention to women's basketball in a way the league hadn't seen in years. Angel Reese made the debate real. Caitlin Clark ended it on her terms. What happens next season when both of them come back with a full year of professional experience is a conversation worth having. Because if this first chapter was this good, the rest of the story is going to be something else. You've seen our take. Now we want to hear yours. Drop it in the comments below, and if this earned it, share it with someone who needs to see it.